I had this dream of the Philippines, right? You've probably seen it too. The turquoise water, the super friendly people, and a lifestyle where my money would just go further. I watched all the YouTube videos, I read the blogs, and I totally bought into the fantasy. But after 2.5 years, I knew I had to get out. My dream had slowly, and pretty painfully, turned into a daily struggle. Look, this isn't a bash the Philippines video. It's a gorgeous country with some of the most wonderful people you'll ever meet. This is just my story, my reality check for why it became unsustainable for me. And these are the 10 reasons I regret moving to the Philippines. Alright, let's start with the biggest one for me, and honestly the main reason I had to leave: healthcare. Before I moved, I read that the Philippines had high standards with great English-speaking doctors, and in some ways that's true. In big cities like Manila or Cebu, you can find these incredible private hospitals that look like 5-star hotels. But that's where the good news ended for me. My first dose of reality was a nasty bout of dengue fever. I was in a smaller provincial town and the local clinic was, let's just say, basic, and I'm being generous. They did what they could, but the place was clearly under-resourced. It was a shocking difference from the shiny medical centers I'd seen online. That experience showed me the massive gap in healthcare quality between the cities and everywhere else. If you have a serious health condition or a sudden emergency outside of a major hub, you're taking a huge risk. Then, there's the system itself. Even if you have insurance, most private hospitals will demand a large cash deposit before they even admit you. The thought that I could have a medical crisis and have to first negotiate a payment just to get critical care was a constant source of anxiety. It felt less like healthcare and more like a business deal at the worst possible time. That fear, the constant what if, it just became this heavy weight I couldn't shake. Reason number 2 is something you deal with every single day: the infrastructure grind. I work online, so a stable internet connection isn't a luxury. It's my absolute lifeline. Now, people will say the internet in the Philippines has gotten much better, and in certain parts of the big cities that's true. But it's still wildly inconsistent, and once you're outside of those specific areas, it's a different story. I can't even tell you how many times my connection would just die during a client call or a file upload would take hours, not minutes. Add in the frequent power outages, they call them brownouts, that happen without warning, and my entire workday could just vanish. Beyond the digital world, there's the physical one. Sidewalks often feel like an afterthought, so you're forced to walk in the street dodging a chaotic mix of cars, motorcycles, and tricycles. And the traffic, my God, the traffic in the cities is famous for all the wrong reasons. A trip that should take 20 minutes can easily turn into an hour and a half. This isn't just an annoyance, it steals your time, your energy, and your sanity. That daily battle, the spotty internet, the power cuts, the traffic, it just wore me down. Number 3 is all about money, the real cost of living versus the one you see online. Yes, on paper, the Philippines is very affordable compared to the West. You see these budgets, right? Live in paradise for $1,200 a month? And yeah, maybe you can, if you're living in a provincial area, and your definition of comfortable is really flexible. My mistake was not factoring in the hidden costs of a Western lifestyle. That super cheap apartment online, it probably doesn't have hot water or reliable power. If you want a modern condo in a safer, more convenient area like BGC in Manila, you're going to pay for it. All of a sudden, your rent isn't that much cheaper than a small city back home. And while local food is cheap, what if you want something that reminds you of home? A specific brand of coffee, a decent block of cheese, a good bottle of wine? Get ready for some serious sticker shock. Many imported goods are heavily taxed and can cost double or even triple what you're used to paying. The same goes for quality electronics. That dream of a cheap paradise gets a lot more expensive when you actually try to live in it. Reason number 4 is something that will test the patience of a saint: the bureaucracy. The second you decide to stay longer than a tourist, you're thrown into a world of endless paperwork, long lines, and mind-numbing inefficiency. Just to extend a simple visa, you have to burn an entire day at an immigration office, waiting in line after line. And it's not a one-and-done thing. It's a ritual you have to repeat every couple of months. If you're going for a long-term retirement visa, it gets even more complicated and confusing. There's this constant low-level stress that makes it impossible to feel settled. You always feel like a guest, never a resident, just one missing stamp away from being told you have to pack your bags and leave. Number 5 is a bit more personal, and it's about connection, or the challenge of finding it. On the surface, Filipinos are some of the warmest, most welcoming people on the planet. I definitely made friends. but I found it incredibly difficult to get past that initial, surface-level friendliness. There's a big cultural reason for this. Filipino culture is all about family, which is a beautiful thing. But for an outsider, that tight-knit family circle can be really hard to break into. You can be a good friend, a welcome guest at the party, but actually becoming part of their inner circle is a whole different ballgame. I found myself feeling lonely a lot, even when I was in a room full of people. Conversations would stay light and I just couldn't find those deeper, more vulnerable connections that I was used to. This isn't a knock on the culture at all, it's just a difference that I personally found really hard to adapt to. After a while, that lack of a real support system really took its toll. Alright, number 6. That constant nagging feeling that you're seen as a walking ATM. It's what people call the foreigner price. And while it's not everybody, it happens often enough to be draining. The tricycle driver quotes you double the local fare. The vendor at the market's prices magically go up the second they see you coming. You learn to be on guard, to haggle for everything, to be a little more suspicious than you want to be, and that chips away at you. It's exhausting to feel like you're always a potential target. It builds a little wall between you and the community, and it just soured a lot of my day-to-day interactions. It's a hard way to live. Reason number 7 hits on a deep psychological level. You can't really put down roots because, as a foreigner, you can't own land. Simple as that. You can buy a condominium unit, as long as foreigners don't own more than 40% of the building, but the land under it, never yours. You can get a long-term lease, but it's still just a lease. This might sound like a small thing, but it messes with your head. How can you ever feel like you truly belong to a place where you're legally barred from owning a piece of it? It just reinforces that feeling of being a permanent guest. For me, owning a home, a piece of land, is a huge part of feeling secure and invested in my future. The legal barrier was a constant reminder that I was an outsider, and it stopped me from ever feeling truly at home. Okay, number 8, this one might be controversial, but we need to talk about the food. And I know a lot of people love Filipino food, and there are some amazing dishes. But for me, the everyday options got pretty repetitive. There's a lot of fried food, a lot of pork, and a lot of rice. I kept waiting to find that amazing, diverse street food culture like you see in Thailand or Vietnam, but it's just not really the same here. Finding high-quality, fresh, and healthy food often meant a special trip to an expensive grocery store. I love a good lechon or adobo, but the lack of variety day in and day out just became monotonous. Number 9 circles back to relationships, but from a very different and much more complicated angle. The dynamic of being a Western man dating in the Philippines is a minefield. There's often a cultural expectation that you, as the foreigner, will be a provider, and not just for your partner, but for their entire extended family. This can create a really difficult situation where you're left wondering, am I loved for who I am, or for what I can provide? Trying to set financial boundaries can be seen as selfish as it clashes with deep-seated cultural values about family duty. It's not to say you can't find a genuine loving relationship, you absolutely can, but it's a pressure that's always there, and for me, it added a layer of stress to my relationships that I found impossible to sustain. And the final reason, number 10, is the toughest one to admit. Over time, I felt like I was losing who I was. The constant adjustments, the daily frustrations, the feeling of always being on the outside, it started to change me. The person who arrived, optimistic, open, and excited, was getting chipped away. I found myself becoming more cynical, less patient, and just more closed off. I was spending so much of my energy just trying to navigate my environment that I had nothing left for myself, for my own happiness. I realized my dream had become a compromise, and that compromise had become a sacrifice. I was sacrificing my peace of mind and my well-being, and no amount of beautiful sunsets can make up for that. I left because I had to find myself again. So, that's my truth, and I want to be super clear. This is my experience. I know expats who are having the time of their lives in the Philippines, and would probably disagree with everything I just said. And that's totally fine. The point of this video isn't to scare you away from the Philippines, it's to encourage you to go in with your eyes wide open. Look past the perfect drone shots and the paradise for pennies videos. Do the real research. Understand the challenges just as much as you understand the joys. My dream didn't pan out, but leaving was the best decision for me. I learned so much about myself and what I really need to be happy. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you lived in the Philippines? What was your experience like, the good and the bad? Drop a comment below, I promise I read them all. And if this video helped you in any way, consider giving it a like and subscribing for more honest talks about life abroad. Thanks for watching.